In today's video, I'm sharing the last portion of an interview that I did with Johnny Robertson. If you missed the first episodes of that, I will link to that in the description below. In this video, Johnny continues to talk about the rich history of Culberson, North Carolina, which today is a community. In days gone by, it was a thriving little metropolis there, and in the history that Johnny shares is just fascinating and important to document because there's not many people that remember Culberson in those days. He tells a really sad story, though, about Culberson that was handed down through to him. It didn't happen when Johnny was alive, but about a lady that got off the train there in Culberson, and she was having some mental issues, and she ended up just giving her children away there at the train station. Thankfully, they were all taken in by good, kind people and went on to have good lives. Johnny also talks about the trains of that era when it was, trains were more important. Today, trains don't even run into Murphy. They don't even come into Murphy. But he talks about them in relation to both travel, but also freight and even logging, how they were used in the logging industry. Johnny tells a wonderful, humorous, cute little story about Bill Hughes. Now, if you're a local person, that name probably has already pricked your mind because Bill was the mayor of Murphy for many, many, many years. And this is a cute little story about Bill trying to get to Atlanta, but that's not exactly where he ended up. You'll notice in this video, just a little bit as it starts, I don't know, the first portion of what he's talking about, I kind of thank him for talking to us, and it sounds like the video is going to end. Hold on, because it doesn't end there. Johnny kept talking, so I kept letting the camera roll, and so I actually kind of thank him and tell him I hope I can come back and see him, but that first time is not the end of the video. Just hold on, because I say all that again at the end. And at the end, you can hear Johnny's already thinking about the things that we can talk about next time when I get to visit. I hope you enjoy this last portion of the interview with Johnny Robertson.
But they used to have a rock quarry in Culberson too. And they was in tombstone business, and that's what they call it, Murphy marble vein. And see, it runs over at 908 where that rock crusher is.
Right.
That's it. And you go on down to Jasper, Georgia, down there, Whitestone and them places. That's still Murphy marble vein. And but they closed that down. I never do remember it operating. But you can go down there and see, where they've been. Of course, marble up there, they had that quarry up there where they got monuments, and that shut down. But the demand for monuments for the number of people ain't what it is. People started cremating.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so many more.
But talking about churches again, that church down there at Culberson, the Baptist church, it's either the oldest standing church in Cherokee County or close to it. It was formed in 1897, and I'm sure that they built it probably within a year or two after that. So see, that goes back into the 1800s right
Yeah.
there. And it's technically, that older stuff that you read, it's First Baptist Church of Christ of Culberson. That's the official name. And how they come up with that, I don't know. But the Methodist Church, they sold it and tore it down. And that's, if you're familiar with Culberson, it's where Ronald Shore lives right today. It's where it's set. But these two buildings still standing down there. There was former post offices. One of them is about 8 by 10 or something, and it had the boxes in it and everything, and in the back part's where the postmaster was. But the post office that's there now was probably built, I'm going to say, late 50s, maybe early 60s. And it's Randolph Shields is the one that built it. And but when the road come through Culberson there, and they made it a 5-lane. That changed a lot.
Yeah.
You take where Glen Orme's store was, or where they got that. That got Arthur Nichols' store that was there, and but it just sort of changed everything.
Did they put that road in at the same time, the 4-lane, or was which preceded, which was first?
Well, on US 64,
Yeah.
that was put in like sort of when I was in the Army. And you take it was put in there somewhere about 68 to 71. That was when that was built. And then the 4-lane down on Highway 60, Spur 60, that was put in I would say it would have been '90s.
Oh, okay.
So it's pretty recent.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they'll ever 4-lane it any time soon from 60 on down to 515
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah. You know, they're working on the Blairsville Highway now,
Yeah.
starting that project.
Well, they're going right along with it. Just talking about the railroad, you can probably remember it before you get to the hot spot where Emory Stewart had a gas station. There's like a car lot right there now.
Yeah.
But if you look over that way, you see Panther Top Tire over. Well, there used to be a railroad trestle there that they tore out. But they said that they rebuilt that thing in 1926 and never missed a train schedule.
Wow. Yeah.
Train would go through and they'd put a few timbers in and they'd take and
Yeah.
wait for the next one.
I'd forgot about that station till you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's another interesting story we won't talk about.
Oh, goodness. Well, I really appreciate you talking to me, Johnny, and I hope you'll let me come back and we'll talk some more.
Well, I could probably sit here and talk 2 or 3 more hours, just about off the wall stuff.
Right.
But see, my family on the Raper side, about all that down there on Naughty River at one time, somebody in the family owned it. I mean, there was thousands of acres, and then it just. But there's another cemetery that's over there next to Macedonia that, like my grandmother's grandpa and great-great-grandpa's buried in. They ain't but like 3 markers in the whole cemetery. There's like about close to 20 graves. But they, I reckon, I had an uncle that got killed in World War II. And they lived somewhere over on Naughty River, I'm not sure. But at that time, you know, if you had a family member to get killed, you had insurance on them.
Yeah.
So they was the beneficiaries of that. And out of that money that they got, they built a house at Culberson. Back in 1895, down in Culberson, I've heard maybe it was even on New Year's Day, but I don't know that for sure. But it was, anyway, she showed up, and I don't know where she was ever married. I don't know where her husband had died. I don't know where he'd left. But anyway, the story is that she showed up with her kids, and she gave them away right there. One of them was Dolly Thompson. It was my daddy's school teacher. The Andersons that had the hotel at Culberson adopted her. Another one, the Bruces adopted. And the Nichols family down there, one of them was in that. And there may have been more of them, but that's the only 3 that I've ever really heard anything said about. But the woman ended up in Milledgeville, which is the same as our Broughton, you know. And I guess it, you know, her having to do that, you know, really worked on her. But I mean, what do you do?
Yeah.
And well, she was a Bruner from Blairsville. And, but I mean, it was a sad situation, but it could have been worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is terrible, but it sounds like all the kids went on to be okay, or at least
Yeah.
those 3 that you know about.
And getting back to the depot down there, Thomas Little's daddy, I believe he said it was 23 wagons that he had seen come by his house from Blairsville going to Culberson to pick up freight.
Wow.
But you didn't go to Murphy or whatever, you come to Culberson. But the train, I can remember them having a steam engine on that train 2 or 3 times. I guess the diesel was in for maintenance or something, but I remember a steam engine. But out there where the L&N depot is at Murphy, on out through there, I can remember the water tank that they had to put water in the steam engine for the Southern. And but the Southern Railroad depot burnt down back when I was a kid. But and Bruce Boyles, that writes this piece in the Cherokee Scout, when he wrote about the runaway train or whatever it was coming to Murphy, I remember when that happened, because we went into town one day. I think I was going to school, but anyway, we was going to Murphy, and that train was sitting down there. And all them bells and everything else, it was brass, and they had all that stuff shined up and everything else. And it stayed down there 2 or 3 days, and then they took it and went somewhere else with it. But I mean, it was actually come into Murphy on its own power and left.
Wow.
They didn't, I don't reckon they had to push it or tow it or nothing, but I mean, it would still run.
So the depot in Murphy now, what people call the depot down there at the bridge as you're coming out of Murphy, which train was that for?
There's L&N.
L&N, okay.
But now another thing about that depot, what you see down there right now is about what they had at Culberson.
Okay.
It had a tile roof on it and had brass nails to hold them tiles on. I've got some of them nails here somewhere.
Oh, wow.
But the depot in Murphy probably was maybe at least 15 to maybe 20 feet longer than it is now. And the part that they tore off was on the town side, you know, end of it. But I can remember them, I guess it's back when I first went in business, they still had what they call a REA, Railroad Express Agency. It was still running. And I don't know how they done that, and they may have had somebody work down there full time. But Glenn Ellis over here, Glenn Ellis was, he worked in Murphy at the railroad, and he stayed there for years and years, and he may have been the one that handled the freight or whatever at the last. But Bill Hughes, that's another interesting story, the mayor. Well, his grandpa was a railroad agent, and I think his name was Bobo. Anyway, Bill said he'd been there hanging around the railroad depot all the time. And people was talking about going to Atlanta and this and that and everything. So he hoboed the train. He got on the train and went to Culberson. And he got off and he thought that was Atlanta.
Oh, goodness.
Well, the train system had a telephone line running beside it. Well, Redmond was the railroad agent in Culberson. He got on that telephone and he called back to Murphy and told Bobo that he had Bill down there.
Oh, goodness.
And anyway, Bobo sent Glenn Ellis after him. And Bill said that was the longest ride he ever took from Culberson back to Murphy.
Oh, goodness. Oh, that's a good story. Was there, thinking about over there at Factory Town and in that area, was there a station, or was that a depot for one of them?
No, the depot for the Southern was over there close to the L&N. It
Okay.
was right on that sidetrack.
On there.
But now you know where the Y is or whatever, where they turn the train around.
Yeah, yeah.
You know where that's
Yeah.
at. But that section right in there, from what I can remember, they call that Factory Town,
Yeah,
Regal Street,
yeah.
whatever. But, you know, right there, as you go into Regal Street, there was like a couple of stores.
Yeah.
But they had a wood yard and stuff there at
Yeah.
one time. And then you're going up there and you had Commonwealth Lumber Company.
Yeah. So
And,
Daddy worked for Commonwealth, and I can remember I don't know if it was still in operation or if it was just the remnants, but of the lumber yards being there.
But Commonwealth run a lot of hardwood flooring. And I remember a tale that somebody told one time. They said they'd send it with the truckloads down to Atlanta where they built a back in housing project.
Yeah.
And then they sent a truckload of flooring down there. Well, they got one, and I reckon they hadn't dried it enough. But anyway, it dried some more on its own. And they said it got to having cracks in it.
Oh, goodness.
And they said they brought it back, and old man Ferg was the boss over it. They said they put her back up there in the dry kiln and run steam in there on it, made them cracks close up. They said send that to Louisiana.
Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness.
But if you don't, if you don't get it dried and stuff,
Yeah,
that's what happens.
right.
But I forget how many, they had employed something like 100 people, I think. And then I've heard people talking about the logging trains that went in here on Hanging Dog. And they bring logs in to Murphy up there. And but they had logging trains. Well, down there around Tellico Plains and everyone
Yeah.
down there, they had logging trains too.
And that was like maybe Ritter Lumber or one of those companies that would just move in and they'd build their tracks and log and then move on.
I think it was Ritter was
Ritter.
the name of it. And but they supposedly they had them on sidewinder steam engines. And what it is, it's like they had a crankshaft on each side of the train, and they had gears on this crankshaft that went to the wheels, and they I don't know exactly what you would call it, but the thing, steam engine, it was mounted on the sides. And they said one of them things was extremely heavy. And that's what they used to push it across the mountain up there, coming out the gorge. If they had a load that the train wouldn't pull, they said they kept a sidewinder steam engine down there, and they'd fire that thing up and push it on across.
Oh, wow.
So, but now, when I guess it was when I was in high school last year, they run a scenic train out of Robbinsville, Bear Creek Junction, and they give a free pass or something. Anyway, a carload of us went over there, and before you get into Robbinsville on the right, they built a little depot. And we got on the train there, and we rode it out to Topton, and rode it back. And the last run of the day, the train was still running into Robbinsville. But see, that went with the wayside.
Yeah.
But that steam engine is just the North Carolina Transportation Museum in Spencer.
I know they've talked about several times about reopening the track from where it goes now all the way through Murphy, like for a tourist kind of deal.
Well, North Carolina, the state's got a rail system.
Yeah.
It runs from, I don't know if it goes east of Raleigh, but it starts at Raleigh, and I think maybe it runs to Hickory or maybe Thomasville in there. But the tracks and everything is still in place to where it could be used all the way to Bryson City.
That's what I was going to ask you about the tracks. I wondered if there's places where people have pulled them up or.
Well, say they pulled the tracks up from Mineral Bluff to Murphy on the L&N. So that killed anything happening there. But the reason the railroad left, it wasn't making no money. But to me, I ain't no engineer or nothing, but from what I've seen just riding down the road, to me it wouldn't be much trouble to take it. The train already comes to this end of Nine-Haley Gorge. And, but you take from right there into Andrews, they put ties in about every third one here a few years back. To me, it wouldn't take much to put that train back to Andrews, and we come right down to it. You could run it to Marble, because there ain't no trestles and stuff much where they'd have to repair them. And if they run the thing to Marble, it's a wonder they hadn't tried to run something all the way from Raleigh out here to the casino.
Yeah.
But I don't
Expect any of that to happen.
Well, another thing that a lot of people that don't want it back.
Right.
The railroad's got a right of way. And like down there on L&N, and I'm assuming that Southern is the same way. That if they ever pull the railroad tracks out, that property goes back to the original landowners.
Reverts back, yeah.
Well, you go to Andrews up there, and you ride back down the road, and you look where the railroad tracks is, and then you look at who might own the property. They just assume the thing be gone.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And it would mostly be like a tourist thing because it's not like locals would. I mean, today people have cars, have multiple cars usually in a family.
Now, I don't know what the name of it is now. It's sold. But when Parker and Reichman owned the chicken houses on the backside of the railroad up there in Andrews, they said they brought grain in to Andrews
Oh,
on
yeah,
freight car.
on them, yeah,
Yeah.
that's good, yeah, for freight, yeah. It
And
might be used for freight.
American Thread up there now in Marble, when they built that plant, the train tracks went right up to the building. They got stuff on freight.
Yeah,
But it's like somebody was talking one time, if you have something shipped to you in the freight, it might take a week. If you call a truck up, it's there next day or two.
yeah, it's true, yeah. Well, Johnny, thank you so much for talking to us, and I sure hope you'll let me come back and
We
hear
will.
some more stories. We really appreciate it.
Well, I'll think about what we've talked about, and
Yeah, keep you a notebook and jot it down. Yeah,
well, I started to do that.
yeah. Well, now you know, I'm interested in all of it, but now you can keep track of it, and we'll come back and visit again.
Well, anything past Murphy towards Andrews, I don't know a whole lot about. But from Murphy to Culberson, and then you get into the dams and stuff, you know. And some of my family worked on them, and some of the in-laws did. And then you can talk about the loop down at Farner, Tennessee. And
Well, there you go. You done
go on and on and
you
on.
done got us the list for our next time. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
But it's good that you come,
Yeah.
and maybe some of this stuff that I told you won't be lost to history. or
Right,
whatever.
yeah. Especially fascinating stuff, all of it, but especially about Culberson. I'm glad we've got all that down.
Well, the people that could have told you a lot about it's already dead.
Yeah. That's why it's important for people like you to tell your story.
And there's not but two other people I could think of that could tell you much more about Culberson than I just did. But that's been an interesting part of my life to grow up in Culberson. It's a different world to what it used to be.